Hey everyone, I think we got it going. Hey, it's Christina there on the chat on Twitch. I am gonna show you some, it's been a crazy day. I've been talking about technical issues a lot lately, and oh boy, has there been technical issues. We actually had a completely different episode planned for release today. I might have even said it on the stream. I hope I didn't on Tuesday, but we just had the weirdest issue. The project edited from Derek came to me, and I could edit it. I could review the edit. It just had all kinds of problems, and when I tried to render it, it would not go. And so I barely had any sleep. I'm gonna do this and go to sleep. There was something I was gonna do, like processing wise tonight. We'll see though. But I'm excited about this because I've had some people ask lately about doing a list of what you need to get. And of course, hey, thanks for the subscription, Michael. I get to dance. Woohoo! Thanks for the resubscribe and thanks for the support. That's Michael and Christina. They are watching, which is great. They actually started painting following Scott and my recommendations 2 years ago about this time, maybe summertime. I can't remember exactly when we started painting. We might have even started painting in 2020. I can't recall, but we definitely didn't keep at it and then picked back up in 2021. Then I paused, and it's a downer. I wish I hadn't paused at all because I really like doing this stuff, and I absolutely need it to kind of relax. I've just been so stressed out. We are going next week on the PDT cruise, which should be fun. But I'm hoping I can kind of relax and disconnect a little bit. The goal is I'm clear. I'm not a pro. I don't know. I know a lot from just years of doing this, and you could go crazy on getting the supplies you need for painting minis. You don't have to though. You can absolutely start with a basic setup that will get you pretty far. And if you enjoy what you're doing, you can always upgrade what the components, the things that you're using to get your jobs done. I will be showing you some stuff that is not available anymore. The biggest culprits on that is Games Workshop, Citadel. I use their mat here that's on camera all the time, and it is not available anymore. And I mean, I'll show all that. We'll show you those things too, because they're critical. I really do use them, and it's kind of a bummer. And I will be showing you a different miniature holder. So let's cut to the table. Let me get this correct here. So I got a bunch of stuff here. The number one thing that you're going to need is miniatures, right? You're going to need to have stuff that you would like to paint. I recently finally just started painting let's see if this focuses. It might be too close. Hello. Let me try it here. I know it's in focus down below, so it does work. Goodness. Is it not set to autofocus? That could be. Let me see here. I have had this camera doing double duty lately. It shouldn't matter though. I don't think this camera actually did it. It is not focusing. Huh. Do everything else. Let me see if I have to turn it on. Oh, it's on spot focus. Well, there you go. That would be the reason why. Get out of that menu. Goodness gracious. What a pro. I don't know how to do it on this thing. Great. Well, I guess I could spot, well, I don't know. Let's see if it spot focuses on this. It does, but that's not really what I want. Huh. It is fast though, I'll tell you that. I must have bumped something on this camera. Let me see here. Well, anyway, this is a mini from Fantasy Flight. It's from Imperial Imperial Assault. It's pretty great. You know, this is not too small of a miniature. It's a little, definitely larger than a D&D style mini. Han here, let's see if I can get that, keep that in focus. Han is a little bit more like a D&D style mini, so maybe this is, I feel these are both a little bit big. I don't actually have, I have some D&D minis, you know, those are in a game that you know people love, and they're totally, you know, the color is, hey, it's out of focus. I thought I did that. Let's see if it does that. No, it's like, boy, I don't know. Oh, there we go. It's back. Something weird. I somehow touched it when I did the thing. So yeah, these are tan when you get them, right? They're not in camera there. These are tan. And you know, they're not too, you know, tan minis on the table, not too exciting. Obviously, they're going to be, the different faction will be two different colors. And you know, in some ways that makes life easier because you can tell clearly what unit is what when it's the basic color. I've also been painting a lot of Marvel United, and these minis are blue and they're nice and, you know, nicely detailed. You know, comparatively they are much bigger than the stuff from the Imperial Assault. Another game that I really, series of miniatures that I really love are Warhammer minis. These are actually from Warhammer, Warhammer Underworlds. This is actually from the very first set of stuff. I actually stopped buying those because I have so many, and it's too bad because I actually really love them, but they've gotten a little expensive. They're not terrible, but they're a little expensive, and I have more than I'm ever going to play with. And then I have Warhammer prop. This is actually another fantasy army. This is Warhammer Underworlds. It's all Iron Skulls boys or whatever. I do have fantasy, 40K stuff. I have some stuff that's just started painting. This is some Chaos Space Marines. Here's a guy that's a little bit further along in the same batch. I've never painted any Chaos Space Marines. I think Sebastian and I went, when we were in Germany, we went to the store and bought some minis for me to paint, and I thought, hey, you know, I've not painted any of these guys ever. So I started on those, and then, you know, I painted on the stream recently. I did, oh wow, an arm just broke off. That'll be a fun thing to talk about too. I just dropped the Jurassic World one. We did Jurassic World earlier this year, and I think maybe part of last year. I can't remember. Everything's a blur now. I think it was last year. These were, you know, green and red. This is an herbivore. I don't think I have any other ones out, but you know, this was so I'm gonna also show you mostly what my technique is. They're your competitors. I'm going with a quick technique that actually I think gives you pretty fine results. Here's the miniatures. Some of the miniatures I painted for Flamecraft. Those are all on our YouTube channel. We have a lot of this stuff archived. We didn't make it on everything. But oops, not in focus. They, you know, they're just the color of the player pawn, right? And I painted them to match that color roughly, so that they're distinctive on the playfield. There were 6 of those minis, and this one was a blue that I ended up painting kind of a little bit different, not quite as blue as it probably should have been. I wanted it to look magical, I don't know. And I painted a lot of the Warhammer stuff. I mean the Marvel Unite and Warhammer. I painted Warhammer over the years. A traditional method, I'm going to show you like one of my finest examples, is a standard, what they call heavy metal style. I'm not that good. I'm pretty good. I took a while to paint this though. It took me a good chunk of time, and it turned out good. It turned out well, but it's, you know, it is time consuming. I really love doing these. I actually, this is the second one of this mini I painted, because I painted the ones in the BGG library. Originally they were going to be mine, and then Scott wanted to have the minis painted set on the of Space Hulk. This is actually from Space Hulk. And I was like, yes. And so I brought my set in, and then we painted together the Gene Stealers, which are the little aliens style creatures. Then I discovered when we were doing during the so I've known about doing zenithal highlighting. This is the beginning of my trick. I've known about zenithal highlighting for a long time, and I've actually done it, particularly with dry brushing, because I used it originally to inform the shading of a miniature. I did not do it on this, but I had done it. I have to have an example of that somewhere. I'll have to look for it. But I never went that crazy on it. I actually kind of got out of painting minis there for a while, a good 10 years. But what you're doing on this is you are painting the miniature black, then you paint it gray, and now I airbrush this. I'll explain some other stuff in a moment. But then I paint it as black as I can get it everywhere. I try to get every bit, and then if you should go in and then touch it up with a brush underneath, and I'll explain the paints and all that stuff when we get to the things you need to have. And then you do black, then you do gray all the way around, then you do white from above. Now I cheat that a bit, and I sometimes focus on their face, absolutely focus on their face, because I want their face to be bolder. But you can see the shading. It looks like there's shadows that are, I mean, there are shadows, but there's also shadows from the paint. Now you can paint traditionally and just, you know, mix the paints and darken them to give you the shading and stuff like that. But this method I'm using what they call speed paints or contrast paints. I have quite a bit of contrast paints. Let's see here. I painted this one here with this yellow. Gosh, I don't think it was that yellow, but maybe. Something like this. This bottle costs you about $8, and maybe a little bit less online. Not too much, though. They don't really discount that stuff too much. But then I, you know, built it up with over the shading. It's pretty transparent, so you can see the shading underneath. Let's see. Here's this guy. So, you know, they're actually, I think I have the exact same mini unpainted. So there you go. I'm painting Scots as well. So you can see what they look like, and then I put the shaded, the semi-transparent paint over it, and it makes it look like it's shaded, and the coloring is great, right? So that's the method I'm going to teach. That's the type of supplies I'm going to show you how to get to do these kind of results. They, for me, work great. I did these, I believe it was these 2 minis when I first painted them. I did these in less than 2 hours. I don't think I painted the eyes, but I did everything else pretty much, and maybe I painted these horns, and, you know, a little bit. I put some like distressing on them after the fact. And I definitely didn't paint the bases till later. I generally do like gray bases, but you can do, and you should do, colorful bases if you want them to just look more interesting. Of course, I'm going to show you one that I've colored, but it's mostly gray. And you know, these guys here, the Iron Man, this I didn't do gray. I did 2 versions of that, and I'll explain that in a minute. So, at a minimum, you really need to get paint and brushes. There are lots of choices on brushes, and you know, you kind of get what you pay for, but at the same time, I think you can get by without going too crazy, for sure. I mean, I don't buy any expensive brushes, or I don't buy many expensive brushes anymore. So on the high end, I have like this Winsor Newton Series 7, and that's a 2. Let's see if I can. It's a 2, and it's pretty small. I've used this brush, and you can see I didn't do a good job cleaning it. This has got a small body. Wow, that is really, I did a terrible job cleaning that. Let's see if I can clean it up. They're great brushes. This is a sable brush, costs $20, something like that. That's too expensive for me to paint miniatures. I don't even know a situation anymore that I would use one of these. I mean, I still will use them. I own them. I use these to protect the tips. I mean, all of them, even the cheapest brushes I have, come with, generally they come with the kind of the protector. And I think it's a good thing if you're not going to keep them in a jar where you don't bang them up. Let's see. Hey, Live Creativity. Live Creativity, they're over on YouTube. Were people that ask specifically about it. Their son is going to paint minis, wants to paint minis. So, you know, that's an expensive brush. This is a not too expensive brush here. This was something I got on Amazon. Oh, no, I think I got this on eBay. And these were a couple dollars per brush. They, let me get this wet. This one, for whatever reason, didn't quite keep a point that great for very long. It's still good. But you can see it gives you a point. So for ages, I used to use this style brush. This is another Winsor Newton, much less expensive. It's a double-aught. It's tiny. I use these all the time, and I still use them. Again, this isn't very well cleaned. I just used this one last week, so didn't get it off the ferrule. You know, I don't feel you should spend too much money on brushes. You can get a pack of brushes that look similar to these. I'll talk about these more specifically in a minute. But you want to make sure, these are synthetic. They call these golden Taklon. It's not focusing. Hello. Anyway, there you go. And you can get a kit for like $10 with about 5 brushes, maybe even a little bit less, especially if you go like where they're having a sale, or, you know, or like Hobby Lobby, or Nikki does not like Hobby Lobby, but if you go to like Michael's or Joanne, you can get a coupon again for cheaper. That would be a perfect way to start. But what I'm going to point out is I use these tiny little brushes. This is another little tiny brush I have, another old one that is, I think, a double-aught as well. Yeah, these are both about the same size. This one's kind of getting beat up. And this is one I've had this for a while, but I didn't use it. So the point is getting tired on it. And that's because when you're brushing, you tend to like poke it into areas. And when you do that, it just bends the tips, you know, the tips of the bristles. And you can see here, let's see if I have one that's got a, this one is actually the one I've used the most. It's not that visible, but it isn't great. I actually can use the hook to help me sometimes, if they call it where you hook the bristles at the end. Let me put some other glasses on so I can actually see what I've got going on here, because these are tiny. So it gives you, this is just starting to, at the very tip of this, it's starting to get a hook. And I use it sometimes to like poke into areas, you know, to get in someplace that's a little bit more hidden. So don't throw out your brushes when you're doing this stuff. Now, so, you know, this was a couple of dollars per brush. I probably bought 6 of them. I also bought some from Dick Blick, which is a good supplier online. Where the heck are the Dick Blick ones? I have a bunch of them. They're really big. They were 6s. I'm not really talking about size, but I should get into that. I just dropped something. Then there's these brushes here that are about $10 a piece from Monument Hobbies. Monument Hobbies is one of my favorites. These are also synthetic. They call it synthetic Kolinsky. Kolinsky is a type of sable, I believe, but these are not really that. This looks legitimately more like a natural fiber, but it isn't. I don't think I've used this one yet. But really, so buying one of those packets is pretty great. If you think those are not too bad when you get something like that, you can buy what I've got lately, which is what I really am most exclusively using. These are Royal and Langnickel. Royal and Langnickel is like I don't know if it's just educational. They have some nicer brushes. This was a kit with 144 brushes on Amazon and eBay. It's about $45 to $50 some maybe, but that is a great price for 144 brushes. Now, and you notice the tips are pretty darn sharp. That is the thing that you kind of need to understand. It doesn't matter how big your brush is, because if the point is great, then you're able to paint, number one, when it's a bigger belly is what they call it, when it's a fatter brush. Let's compare these two. This is like these are the ones that I use all the time. This one, the orange one, will hold way more paint, right? You don't need to use a super tiny brush. It's good for like doing details specifically because it's very tiny, like trying to do eyes. It is hard, and you notice I said trying. So something like that will do a good job for you, and you don't have to feel bad for tossing them. But don't toss them, right? Number one, you use the brush. When it gets tired, you have another use for it. For example, and I'm going to clean this brush a little bit later. I did not do a good job at it. You'll see this was actually white bristles. I don't know how clean it's going to get, but this is a brush that I've had forever. It is from American Painter, which is like Michael's, and they make some okay paints. They're not great. The pigments are large, and so I wouldn't necessarily suggest buying those, but if you really, really want to start at the basics, you could do something like that and buy those bottles that they have, the craft paint bottles that they have at places like Michael's and Joanne. And but I recommend buying miniature paints. Now, again, I'm going to be going for a different style of painting, so you will not be buying those paints because they don't have them. Golden makes some brush paints that are similar to that have been around longer than contrast paints, and I have a bottle of it out here somewhere, but I don't see it. Golden makes one. What are they called? Easy Flow or... Oh, there it is. There's one. This is one I bought recently because I wanted a green. Now I don't really need lots of green. So this is a golden artist color. They're not cheap, but they are cheaper. The thing is golden uses expensive pigments. So like this bottle was probably a few dollars, maybe $4 or $3. But like if you buy a specific type of blue or other color, the pigment is more expensive, and that bottle will be more expensive. So these are pretty good, but you can also buy Army Painter Speed paints, which I don't have any, still haven't bought any yet, which I want to, but I have too many paints, so I won't buy any. This is an Army Painter bottle of paint. This is around $3 or $4, $3.50, $4. This is a wash, but you get the contrast, the speed paints in this size of bottle for about $4. So it's half the price of the GW stuff. They've just reformulated their speed paints. I mean, it's crazy because their first batch came out last year, and then this year they had more colors and a new formulation. So you definitely need brushes. You need a cup. One of the best things to do is just use a mug. Mugs are great. They're heavy. They will not easily fall over. I mean, water falling over is not as horrible as paint, or depends on the paint. But that's pretty great. GW, that's Games Workshop / Citadel, makes these still. They're relatively recent. They're great because you can see I had some water in here earlier. They have rills, like ridges at the bottom to help clean your brush. And then they have these here that help you create points. So you drag your brush, so you don't have to lick the brush. That's one thing many people do, including myself sometimes, which I don't like doing, but like when I'm crazy in a rush. But you pull it through this and it'll drag it to a point. Oops, I'm sorry, it's not on camera. It'll drag it to a point. It's really great. These are probably $12 now. They went up in price lately. But they're great. You can get them on Amazon and at GW's site. You can also get them on, I think Amazon might have them discounted. Miniature Market might have them and they'll be discounted. This is a 3D printed piece that I have a 3D printer, so I do lots of crazy stuff. But somebody designed this specifically for these pots. I have two different sizes here. I have this one and then I have this one. You know, they took me a little bit of time to print, but I love having them because there is no way to hold brushes on there. It's not critical, but this is nice that you can put your brush here. And of course it's going too far, but on a surface, and it helps it dry. I mean, there's lots of discussions like how you should dry your brush. I basically dry them standing straight up. I have a cup like this that's pretty great, but it's very light. It's not very stable. If you notice, the one I showed you from Citadel is wider than it is, you know, at the base than it is at the top. So it's going to be it's going to be more likely to be stable. Triple aught Winsor Newton. Okay, well, that is Maxi. I'm sorry, I can't quite read your name there. 000 is good. I mean, I have that type of brush. Let me see. I even have 10-aughts. Let's see here. So Winsor Newtons are great, but I honestly feel they are way overpriced. And for miniature painting, you're just going to beat them up. What do I have here? I have a 0. I have a 000. And another 0. You know, some of these I think were for Nikki as well, so I have a few repeats. I do use 10 zeros sometimes, 10-aughts from other manufacturers. I don't really recommend them. Number one, as I was saying a little bit ago, you don't have much of a belly to hold the paint. Do I have any 10-aughts floating around here? I should. Anyway. They don't hold a lot of paint. So you're constantly going back to your source for the paint, and that's not so great. You can actually get fantastic results from something like this. I painted the bulk of the minis recently with these brushes. Because like as I was saying, you can see how tiny the tip is. You can actually do lots of detail with it. And Winsor Newton makes some less expensive brushes, but they're not that inexpensive. These were 144 brushes for 6 different sizes, I think. You know, so as I was saying, don't throw them out. When you're done with them, you can use them to be a dry brush or just to put your primer on your miniature, or painting a big area or painting terrain. So that's like the range of brushes. And it definitely, sizes you want to get, I feel 4 is a great size. And this is also a 4, I believe. No, is it? Yeah, this is a 4 as well. These are really crazily. They're not, you know, it's a little, they're real inexpensive, but they do the job. And, you know, some of them in that kit will be not really great. I think the smallest ones are the weakest ones that they make, but they're not terrible. You'll see it's fatter than some of the other ones like this, so the point is still pretty good. It's still got a pretty good belly, so the fat is good, but I don't think the points are as good as some of the larger ones. I don't know, you know, the most expensive brushes, I know that they put them together with hey, it's Gerhard maybe? You definitely, if you use enamels, don't lick. Yeah, it's not, I don't like to lick brushes, particularly because back when I was painting, I was using cadmiums and things that are terrible. So I generally only lick a brush if it's been cleaned, but then again, I don't like to lick brushes, so I really avoid it. And I mean, using enamels and oil paints, that's another level of painting. I actually painted my very first miniatures back in the day. They were testers enamels. And from what I remember, they look great. I need to find them. They're in here somewhere just to see, because literally they're the first things I painted. So don't spend a lot. Get like a 0 and a double aught and a 2. You know, any of those, like one of those each, and then a couple, you know, slightly larger sizes. This is a 4, there's a 6 that I have. They're all okay. This is here another, is this a 4? No, it's a 3. This is one I bought. Nikki does not like me going there. We were there together when we bought it. This is Hobby Lobby. They have some nice brushes. The Master's Touch brushes are great. This dark thing is just to simulate some sort of a fur, you know, sable hair. It is not. That just dyed that color. But it's a good brush, and I would like to buy more of them, but we don't go there. This is one that I bought from Monument Hobbies that's a 2. These are made in Germany. This is actually Tabletop Minions brush, if it'll focus, series. Now he, you know, selected the ones he likes, and they put together a set. They're $20-some for 3 brushes, I think. They also do bundle pricing if you buy brushes from them. So they start off at one price, and then they drop in price when you add a certain number of them to your cart. They also give you discounts on your first one. I think Adam has a code. Maybe it might be just Tabletop Minions that you could probably use. You should watch Adam. He streams on our the BGG front page, but his channel is Tabletop Minions on Twitch and YouTube. He has some great videos. His stuff on YouTube's more about subjects. Sometimes he shows some techniques. He doesn't do that quite as much. I think he reserves that now for his streams that he does on Mondays and Thursdays. No, Mondays and Fridays. So yeah, don't go crazy on your brushes. Then you need paints. So again, probably a 00. I mean, I have a 000 somewhere here that is not very big. And you need them, but I don't recommend doing lots of painting with them. This is a 1 here that's in the kit, those Royal Langnickel ones. It's fine. I've used this one quite a bit, and it's one of the weaker ones in the stuff that I've used recently. But you can see one of the problems is that I haven't cleaned it enough to get it out of the ferrule. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I should have covered some other brushes. Well, we'll cover those. They'll be a little bit more advanced. When you're painting, you really want to use a primer because it's better it's designed to stick to the miniature. Oh, that's good. No problems. I'm definitely trying to help everybody try to do get started in this. It's not too terribly expensive, especially if you're spending an inexpensive amount for brushes, like I'm saying, to get started. Might as well just cover these real quick. These are makeup brushes from e.l.f. Terry Latorco recommended these to me a long time ago. I haven't seen Terry in ages. These are like $4 or $5 on Amazon. I use this one here. This is a Ultimate Blending brush from e.l.f. and then this is a eye contour brush. They're not the greatest. I've heard they're really not great for makeup necessarily. It depends on your skin probably and how sensitive you are. They feel soft to me. But I use these for dry brushing. I also, as I was saying earlier, I use this one, which I shouldn't put over to the side, for dry brushing stuff too. It depends on how much stuff you're covering. I covered this and this. These were ones that I painted again. I got another box of these of the Marvel United. These are in the base set, and I actually drink the water. Yeah, that's another reason why I don't use a cup. Gare on YouTube is saying that he accidentally drank the water out of a cup, and that's one reason why I say don't use a cup. It's definitely better to use something like this because you're not going to pick this up. You're not going to drink out of it. I also feel you need two. You need to have one that's really dirty and then one that's clean. that you can add water to your brushes. You don't necessarily need two of the same size, but I like having two of, I have another thing I'll show you in a bit that I use to make that so that I have two different sources of water. These were, instead of airbrushed like I did on these I did airbrush these, I will admit that. I painted the black on them with an airbrush. Then I dry brushed these to give them the highlights. Now, I didn't pick two great mini. This is not a great mini. I really like the Black Widow one. I was very happy. This is one of the first ones I painted with how she turned out. And I really like her face. I think I spent more time on it than this is. I just dry brushed this. This one I think I actually came back in and painted her face because it looked, what I joke was they kind of have the dark, it looks like they have a 5 o'clock shadow. But these, I painted them black, and you can do them, I might have, I know I airbrushed these. I did one of the Jurassic World ones that I did in a dry brush style to do the zenithal highlighting is what they call this kind of highlighting. Meaning, you know, the zenith, the sun at the highest point. So this one I did with, did the black, and then I just dry brushed this with more and more white. So dry brushing is, you know, you can see a little bit in here. There's some paint in there. So I didn't get it easy. You can't really get these wet, so it's a little hard to get them to clean up, but these seem to go for a long time. Yeah, her hair is amazing. I think both of these look really cool. I really like this. I think it's cool. This was early, so I didn't have this one trick I have that I go and I before I paint them, I'll show you here, I'll find one. So here is Gamora. Gamora's hair, it was, you know, I did the stuff that the highlighting I do, but I also came in with a white undercoat, you know, and just brushed on with a smaller brush. It doesn't have to be too small because you can do it with this brush this size, and this is a 1. And I just went in and put some white paint on the very tips of it, you know, the edges to make it look like highlights. And then I just used one of the contrast paints. I used, for sure, on this one, I'm pretty sure, I used this one here, Flesh Terror Red. Flesh Terror's Red. And that's one of the contrast paints. And I think the results are great. And I think both of these are really, really, oh, well, looking at the same ones here, different ones. I think both of these look really, really cool. They're different styles. They both would look fantastic on the table. And they both take about the same amount of time. This one costs more ultimately because I used an airbrush. We haven't talked about spray cans yet. But this is a quick way you can do it. You just buy some black. You can even just buy black paint, but I definitely recommend a primer. Monument Hobbies makes some great ones. I'll talk about that. Badger makes the Stynal Res. You can use these with a brush. You can also airbrush them. These are designed for airbrush. But yeah, you do the highlighting. You just keep adding more and more on before you painted the colors. And you just build it up so that it's brighter on the top and darker underneath. And so I have this smaller one to do things like get into tighter areas and stuff like that. This one I did something different. I decided I wanted to try, because I wanted him to look more metallic. I actually, I'm gonna make a mess over here. I do use both varnish and wash on these. That's what Gare's asking. This one, I did the base with white paint. And I think I used this brush because I was worried about, because I didn't want it to get anywhere else. Then I did this one with metallics. So my base metallic was this color here. It's chainmail from Citadel, and I think this is an older bottle. Yeah, it's made in France, so that is your first indication. I think the new stuff is made in the UK again. They were originally made in the UK. And I did the same thing. I basically did the darker color, silver, and I did it just to give it a sheen all the way around. And then I used this. So I said the Citadel paints are expensive, and they're not cheap, but these are cheaper. The standard paints are a little cheaper than the contrast paints. We'll talk about how long they all last. But then for the brightest highlight, I used this, which is another about $4 Oh, Indiana Jones good? That's fantastic. I want to see it. I saw somebody's YouTube review said it was terrible. I'm like, that can't be true. This is a metal medium, and it is metallic. I use this for the brightest highlights. Now, it isn't super bright, and his face isn't exactly how I would like it, but I think this is fine, and I just want to show what you can get. Again, it's fitting with the rest of the model, so it's not such a big deal. But this worked really great, and this is another $4 or so bottle. This is meant to be mixed with other colors so that you can have other types of metallics besides, you know, gold and silver and gunmetal and bronze. So ultimately, I think that turned out great. The other thing that I'm not telling you is I definitely used a standard paint here on this with the white, and I used my favorite white lately that I have found, the Pro Acryl from Monument Hobbies. This is around 4 something. This is the Bold Titanium White, and then this is the black that I use. I use these all the time. You definitely still need them, even though you know, I'm trying to use the contrast paints, but you still need whites and blacks. So I did a little bit of, I think on these, I actually came back in afterwards and did a little bit of dry brushing, airbrushing to give the little glow. This is something I'm learning. This is OSL, object source lighting. It's a slightly higher end kind of thing. You can do it with brushes if you do it with thinned out paints, and you just build it up a little bit around there. I also used the silver, which you can see I didn't paint over it, as the highlight. So that's one of the things about when you're painting miniatures, golds don't get necessarily that bright, and you use a little bit of silver to give it its brightest point. You can also use white, but I like using silver. Anyway, so you definitely need like a black and white paint. You definitely need some metallic. I mean, you can paint what they call non-metallic metal, which this is kind of what this is to look like. I mean, it is what I'm doing here. I didn't do anything super intricate on this, but I did this with contrast paints. So the base was painted with white, and then I did with the contrast paints. But you need black and white, some metallics, and then you need, I would suggest not buying everything. Just buy what you need for each set of things you're painting so that you don't get out of control, and try to use what you have, and you can mix colors. So I've done plenty of mixing before GW introduced more of their, because they added another 20-something contrast paints, so there's now like 50-something. But you also need, as I was saying earlier, primer. The Stynylrez is great. This is not even this, I think this is 4 ounces. Maybe this might be the largest size. They might have a 2-ounce bottle as well. I mean, the smallest size. They also have these, which I've had for a couple of years now, and I've used them a lot, and it's barely, I've only used this much of the paint. You can kind of see it under here. It needs to be stirred a lot. You definitely have to stir your paints, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They're a little expensive. You definitely don't want to you try not to buy them in the winter months because they can't freeze in shipping, you know, that would be bad. I've never seen these in a store. Doesn't mean they don't exist. I've seen them at cons. I've never bought them at a con because I don't want to put it in my luggage to get them home. Then you need, so as I said, buy the colors you need. For example, this was one of my first colors. It was my yellow. It looks orange, says Ironed in yellow. And it is definitely orange when you put it on straight. I use this plus what they call contrast medium. Contrast medium is the medium that they use to make your paints liquid. Medium, that's, I called this metal medium before. This is a metallic medium. So it's the base acrylic paint. This has obviously pigment in it, metallic pigment. This one is just clear. You can actually use this as a varnish. We're going to talk about varnishes in a little bit. But you definitely need, if you're going to go with, and I'm pretty certain they have a medium for speed paints. They all must. And you can actually mix these with other paints. Now again, this is a wash. When you start to mix contrast paints though, with others, you might have some issues. You can't use, for example, I don't know what thinner is going to be like. This is an acrylic thinner for airbrushes. and I use this to thin paints all the time, particularly standard acrylic paints. Random paint, that's what you should do, literally. It's use what you have. I have so much paint, I'm out of control. I definitely don't want to buy any more if I can help it. One thing I do use in Southern California is a retarder, and what that does is it lets your standard acrylics, it slows down the drying process. So you can do things what they call wet blending, which I've not really done much of on the show. This was done with wet blending, where I was working on the paint and working the two colors together while they were wet. Now, I primed this, so it was a darker, it was a white, but it was not too hard to do. And with contrast paints, they're wet a lot longer than standard acrylics. I do use the retarder occasionally when I do a standard paint. It's helpful, particularly here in Southern California where stuff dries quickly. But yeah, buy the colors you need. Hey, Hunter. Buy the colors you need. Do not spend too much. Vallejo has a new Express paints. I can never remember the name. I have some Vallejo paints. I love their inks, and I have some of their airbrush paints. They have their own speed paint system. Their colors seemed a little bit more subtle. I own none of them yet. I have not seen them in real life yet. A lot of these stores have already established what they're buying, and so these stores that I bought these from carry these, but they don't have, even Air, the Game Air ones may not even be. They might just have the standard acrylics. And this is a standard acrylic, but it's thinned to go through your airbrush more easily. And then the inks. So you can get a lot of this stuff online. Amazon has some of it, definitely Miniature Market. There are plenty of others. And again, I buy stuff from Miniature Market all the time. I mean, from Monument all the time. But I again, don't go too crazy buying paints. You definitely need, there's a package here, I'm gonna let Nikki know. We got a second try at it on Tuesday, on the stream on Tuesday, and it wasn't the right jacket. Hopefully they got her the right style of jacket this time. Because we're going on the trip and it's gonna be a little colder. But yeah, black, white, some metallic, I say a gold and a silver at a minimum. You can add silver to gold to make it look more like brass. You can add some color, colored pigment like a red to, and maybe some black to get a bronze if you, excuse me, like a brass. I actually have a, brass. Is that, no. Bronze and brass. Brass will be the lighter one. You can make it with the gold. So, you know, don't spend too much. Don't go too crazy when you're first starting out. And I feel you should be patient and slowly build on your skills and make sure you love doing it. So the other thing you can do to base your miniatures, to prime them, is use rattle can paints. This is a standard paint here I've had for ages. It still works great. It's a flat. It works well. I've used it on miniatures. This, at the time, as you can see when I bought it, I used it recently, it was $3.50. They're not that cheap anymore. These are like $20, and that's expensive. There's also some standard paints like, you want matte paints. There are some from Rust-Oleum and paints like that do a really pretty, and you can get ones that are specifically for plastic, and they'll do a pretty good job, you know, as far as they'll stick to the paint. Gare's saying that he likes speed paint the most. It's cheap and less coats. It is. I feel that they both are. I mean, I have not used the speed paints. I want to. I have a lot of GW stuff. They actually sent me all of their most recent addition to the speed paints and the shades, and contrast paints and the shades. So I bought 28 of the original run, and then they asked if I would be interested in checking them out, and I was actually, they asked if I wanted to check out this game. The game, it's called Warhammer Quest: Lost Relics, which I love Warhammer Quest stuff, and I definitely wanted to paint these minis. It's one of the ones that came in the kit I had already painted previously. I think it was a free mini with like a how to paint book from GW, and that was this guy here. And this one was painted traditionally. I did not use any contrast paints because this was before contrast. I painted this before contrast paints came out. But then if you look at this one of course wasn't entirely painted with contrast paints because I have metallic on here. And this one's not done. This doesn't have enough bright spots for me. Normally I showed it earlier, but I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I usually go a little bit brighter on the metallics. But I did this one, all of the other colors with contrast paints, and I think the cloak came out really good. It's not quite the same as this one, and the color doesn't match, but it looks really good. And I mean, for getting it on the table, it's amazing. Now, there was not a ton of other colors on here. I used black, some contrast black, and I think this is mostly basilicanum gray. I used this was this yellow I told you about earlier. So that's thinned out where the brightest is. So what I went in did and painted some white in there with a brush after airbrushing it, and then put this color on. Then I put a less diluted version with a contrast medium on the lantern to get it in there inside that. So it looks pretty good. What you would, as you get advanced, you'd probably want this light to be bouncing off the miniature. I'll show something about that in a minute. Ouch. This one, I broke his finger several times. So then I wanted to show what I did here. This one is actually 4 colors actually, no, that's not true. It's 5 colors, right? 1, 2, 3. No, it's 4 colors. 1, 2, 3. Plus white and black, right? So this was let's see here so you can see her. This is Shuri. She really turned out neat. I used this paint, if I can find it here. It might already actually be out. No, this is Wildwood. I'll show you that. That's one of the colors. Now that's me using 2 colors where I probably would not recommend that so much. But I used Gore-Grunta fur for her skin. Oh no, I don't think that's true. I used a flesh tone for her skin. So there is, let's see if I can find it here. Got everything pushed back here. It's actually a standard flesh tone. Ugh, should have pulled that one out because it's one of the ones I use all the time. Wow, what did I do with it? It's orc flesh. Hold on, let me dig it up. I use one called Gilliman flesh, I think. Oh, there it is, right there. I had it in my hand. So you can see it's a dark brown, but this same flesh tone is this flesh tone, but it's thinned with this contrast medium. So having this really gives you a range of the colors. So again, this was pretty white underneath here, and then I took this paint with just a few drops and quite a few drops of this and got this flesh tone, and I also got this flesh tone, which is much more of this color just straight. And I also built it up. So I put multiple coats on. Then I also used this color here, Wildwood, on her hair. And the hair is literally just one coat. And it looks amazing. This is a testament to the sculpt. Really, really neat sculpt. And then of course I used standard white for the face, the markings on her face and the piping on her outfit. And then this was this yellow again, thinned down with the contrast medium. And then I think the blue is Aethermatic blue, one of the colors I love a lot. Here, these were in the first, as you can tell. So this is the first mini I painted with these. This is the Aethermatic blue. This is the Iondine yellow. This is the Wildwood for the tree body. And then I used the Aethermatic blue on the branches to make the green with the yellow. And I used Ugh. I do not know why that's not here. I looked for this the other day. I think it's under green. It's like Plague Bearer. Yeah, here we go. This is a great color too. This is not mixed up, but Plague Bearer Flesh. And those are all three of those colors. So this is the brown. This is the a little bit of the Wildwood. Then a little bit of this. Then a little bit of actually this and thin down, and then this at the end to do this like tabard that the guy has here. So these were all the first colors I used. These are the first bottles I bought. So this one, and I use this color a lot. This one was not one of the ones I bought. This one and this one were 4 of the ones that I bought, and this is the only one I've replaced. These have been going now for 4 years, almost 4 years, and there is still a lot of paint. So the paints will last you a while, and these are colors I use all the time. And I think you'd have the same results if you were to buy the Army Painter Speed Paints as you would with the GW. I like the GW stuff that I've been using. I've been using it for a long time now, really, for 4 years. But they're great. But you're also spending $8 a bottle, basically. So that's $32 worth of paint. But they last a long time. I've used this Wildwood on so many miniatures. It is really a great color. I use the Flesh all the time. It's still way full. Again, I'm thinning it with contrast medium, which is one of the ways you're going to burn through that's one of the things I've used the most of. This is my second bottle of contrast medium, I believe. I have one on deck. I actually left this open for like a week. It seems to be okay, but it was a bummer. You definitely don't want to leave them open. It wasn't entirely open, but I didn't get the lid sealed. It was sitting here, so it didn't probably evaporate that much, but it evaporated. So I have this on deck. I feel the contrast medium is absolutely, it is essential. There is no, I feel, and it's a little more expensive, I believe. These bottles, maybe $12, I don't remember. But it goes a long way. You can mix those mediums with some of your other paints too. You can actually put the contrast medium with this and use it to do a different type of a technique. Then you need to have a varnish. So you paint all your, I was going to show you this one. This one is one that I did where I tried to do some of the what they call OSL lighting. So this flaming head caused some glow on the ground. And then I also sprayed a little bit with an airbrush, which we'll go over that in a minute, on top. I think I actually sprayed a little bit of white first and then a little bit of the color, one of the colors that I have on here. And then I also did the same thing with I painted the hair with maybe this color, probably this color. Then so this is Bad Moon Yellow. Then I airbrushed the red and the orange. It's not really orange, but it is, this Ironed Yellow. And then the red on the outer edge, and that was this, I believe, ball red, which is, it's a contrast paint, but this is a single pigment paint, and it functions a little bit differently than some of the other contrast paints. That is one thing you'll know that, and I don't know how good they are with the other brands, but some of them are more effective, and they're definitely more effective if you thin them. Some of the weaker ones that don't work too well. But this turned out great, and this was with an airbrush. And I did it at this desk, which I don't recommend airbrushing inside, but the amount of, I'll explain how I did that in a bit, but it was barely any overspray because I was doing it so lightly. Let's see here. So now you need varnish. And as I said earlier, contrast medium is a reasonable varnish. It's not the best. But I have, let's go through some of these here. I have a couple of different brands. These are old Polyscale, which I don't even think they make it anymore, which was a Revell, I believe, paint. Let's see, it should say on here. Testers Canada. So maybe they're still available in Canada, I don't know. I have these bottles that I've used. I mean, you can see there's a lot of varnish in here, and I've used these for years, but I mostly use the satin finish and the clear. The flat is pretty good too, but I have a new favorite flat, which I'll show in a minute. These are not terribly expensive. They're also acrylic. They do a great job. You can airbrush these, but I almost never do. I've almost always just brushed them on. Some people aren't a big fan of that. AK Interactive is a company out of Spain. There's actually a bunch of Spanish paint companies. The Vallejo is a Spanish company. These are pretty great. I don't have a gloss, but satin, matte, in the range of flat, how flat they appear, you know, without shine. This is got a little bit of shine. This is pretty flat, and this is very flat. I don't actually have one of the minis out, I don't think. Let me see. I don't have one out that has the... I did the Red Skull with this matte on his jacket, and it was just phenomenal because it really, really is flat. Now, when you use a flat varnish, it is not as durable. I actually just watched Duncan Rhodes, who used to be a GW painter, talking about different varnishes, and he actually covered some of these same ones. I think he had some AK Interactive, and he talked about this as a varnish. They also have Ard Coat, I guess what they call it, from GW, which is a shiny varnish. The shiny varnish I use is the poly scale one, not satin, not flat. This one here, this is a clear gloss. It's pretty good. This should be giving an example. It doesn't really look quite right, but you can see here how this is a flat one and then this is a gloss one. There is a difference. Look how this one does not reflect a lot of light. Definitely buy some decent varnishes because, you know, you're putting them over your paint job and you can have issues. That's why I don't airbrush. We don't have lots of humidity problems here in Southern California, but we sometimes do. And when you spray varnishes, you run the risk of potentially fogging. But again, I've not actually had that happen. This is only just based on other folks having that problem. But definitely, so one way to protect your miniatures if you think you're going to be handling them a lot is to put on a gloss coat first, like the Ard Coat, and then a matte varnish over it. I have done that before. I've never used Ard Coat, but I've used some of this one as the gloss and done that. I also use this to do things like the gems. So for example, this miniature, which has been matte varnished, but I put the little gems, these soul stones or whatever, with some gloss on them to give them to look like an actual gem of some sort. Sometimes I put, well, you can see right here, it's pretty shiny on on these here. These are also with a technique, again, with standard acrylics to give it to look like it's lit from above, and I'm okay at that. And lenses, I put them on the lenses, I put them on the eyes, which are lenses. But you can do that. You definitely need to varnish, though, to protect your miniatures, especially if you're going to play games with them, which is the whole point of this. Now, the next step, so I explained the spray cans, I've explained dry brushing your minis to make them, to do the undercoating, and you can do effects with them too, like I said. If you're going to use an airbrush, I have a couple of different things I've done. First, I have, I've had this for years. My mother bought it for me. She likes to get me these kinds of things as Christmas gifts. This is an Iwata compressor. It's pretty big. I don't know if I can zoom. I can zoom out. So this is a couple $100. This is not the best one that they make. I don't even think the one that I would buy now, although it isn't a big deal. This one's pretty quiet. It's not. It does a great job. It doesn't go too high. It has a gauge to tell you what pressure you're getting. Now, you're not going to get too much of a range of, and notice it says Sparmax. I'll tell you about that in a minute. You're not going to get that big of range of pressures, but you can adjust it. This is one way that you can adjust it. This is a bleed valve that when certain pressures reach, it'll blow out of there, so it doesn't go too much. And pressure is important because that's how you get smoother finishes with your airbrush. I've had airbrushes for years. My mom and dad talking about getting me things that, you know, crafty things. They bought me an airbrush when I was a teenager, a preteen maybe even. And those, I have some underneath I don't need to pull out, but this is basically a clone of it. This is made by Harbor Freight. I don't think they make these anymore. They do have airbrushes like this in like a 6-foot manifold airbrush kit, like if you're doing car detailing. This one's pretty good. It kind of steals some of the newer techniques, design features. This tip here is very much like a Badger 150 IL. That's the brush I've had forever. I bought this specifically to prime miniatures because I just was like, oh, let's just see how that does and if it does a good job. Now, this has a standard fitting, which Iwata uses. That was that compressor. This hose here, actually I'll show you this hose here. I mean, I'm going over a lot of stuff in multiple levels, but you don't have to go crazy. Again, just get the basic paints, some brushes. Oh, I didn't talk about the mat, so I got to talk about that too. So I was saying Citadel doesn't make them anymore, which is a real bummer because it's actually pretty good. It has these ridges that catch paint so you don't spill it all over your tabletop. I have absolutely, when I spilled this paint, my first bottle of it, and this paint, which I still have, this one actually got ruined. The other bottle actually, the ironed in yellow worked. This one, you see you can't really see it, but the pigment is not, there's not a lot left. Here's an example of the bottle that's correct, and you can see how white it is underneath there. So when it spilled, somehow it lost a lot of that pigment, which helps make it do the contrast paint effect. This one is more of a wash now. You definitely want to spill paints. We'll talk about that in a minute for stuff. But yeah, this is standard ironed style. It's not Iwata that makes it, but Iwata uses them. It's easy to screw on, and it will do a pretty good job, right? These will do a great job as far as airbrushing and not leaking. But when I bought this, so that compressor's a couple $100. I decided that I was going to try to buy a new style. I saw Ninjon do a feature on one that I had actually been looking at, and he actually did one on the exact model that I was analyzing on Amazon. This airbrush here came with this compressor. This is a little handheld rechargeable compressor. It does a really good job. Really, the compressor is great. I'm using it for all kinds of stuff because I can put the compressor in my pocket. It does get a little warm, but it goes a long way. It tells you where you're at on it. Oh, I guess it's off. So this is a gauge that tells me what temperature, what percentage left of battery. I actually got like an hour and a half of spray with this. And this airbrush is pretty great. I got these two things for $55, I think. It runs, that was on sale. I think it's generally about $70. But you get an airbrush and a compressor for around $55 to $70. There are other brands out there that look just as good. There's another one that has you can pull the battery off and put another one on. So it's modular for that. I don't know that that's necessary. It was a little bit more money. This airbrush is okay. It's good enough, especially if you're going to use it for undercoating. It has a removable reservoir to help clean out your brush. It has a lid on the top. This is an aluminum reservoir. You can actually just put paint directly into this well on top if you want with a brush. I'm almost always just use one of these reservoirs. This one doesn't clean super easily, but it is threaded and it has the lid. It has a vent hole, so it'll keep flowing. If you need to have that vent hole to let it keep flowing out of the airbrush. But these are pretty great. It's pretty easy to care for them. They use rubber seals, which ultimately is not great if you use solvents. But since we're mostly doing acrylics here, it's not a big issue. That didn't actually have a seal. I'm going to show one here, but this one does. So most of the seals on my other airbrushes are not rubber. So Badger, the one thing Badger does, I was actually mentioning the size of the connector here. Badger has a custom, not custom, maybe it is custom, but they have a standard connector type that is different. And part of that is kind of a bummer. I mean, I've been using Badgers. I have a lot of Badger brushes. it's a tinier connector. I actually like the smaller connector just because it's not as cumbersome size-wise, but I end up having to add this so that I can hook it up to a standard. This was actually on this. This is called a quick release valve quick connect. You put this in here, and then you put the airbrush in there, and you can actually mix them up. I have a connector for this size too, and you can just use this same adapter. Now again, now I've got this big thing on here. There's a smaller version of it that Badger makes that's pretty good too. One of the great things about these though is they have the ability to adjust how much air you're getting. This little valve, it shows you the maximum versus minimum, how much paint's going to air is going to come out that will push more paint. If you have it going too heavy, it might atomize it too much. You have to really balance it based on the thickness of your paint. I have this phone on here and I don't need it on. It's driving me crazy. There we go. These are like $20, $25, the adapters. These, I mean the connects, and then these, oh, here we go. I was saying I have the adapter right here. It fits both of these easily enough, and then you just pop it to release it. This one's a little bit tougher. I don't know. I only bought that one recently because I saw it and it looked small, so I was like, let me see how that is. This one's a pretty great one too, though. But they both function similarly. I bought these from a company here in Southern California that has airbrush supplies. So I mean, for $55 to $70, and if you buy spray can paints, you know, these cost up to, I mean, even just the Rust-Oleum and stuff paints are not inexpensive. They're $10 or $12 per can, depending, maybe as little as $8 maybe. We were looking at Walmart and saw some recently, brown, I think it was. I might use them for my other hobby that I'm into, a miniature hobby, which is Gaslands. But in the end, I feel that you will get better results and you know, not waste a bunch of cans and not use propellants, right? This is just using compressed air. This uses some sort of propellant, which isn't supposed to be bad for the atmosphere. But you know, and it's flammable. I mean, depending on the paint you're spraying through here, it could be flammable, but on these, you know, this is flammable. It's definitely has to be used outside. This one, I use this compressor and at my desktop and airbrushed with this airbrush here, which I'll talk about in a minute, to get these details, and it was pretty great. Like I barely had any paint coming out, and I didn't even have a mask on, which you absolutely should wear a mask if you're spraying any paint unless you're outdoors. So you know, there's some of the options there for that, and I feel don't spend the money on an airbrush until you use them. You know, decide number one that you like painting minis, and then, you know, if you're ready for that next step. I didn't cover a couple of other basic things. When you're assembling minis, these are all assembled for you when you get them from the company, right? They come that's one of the things I actually have a problem with, is that my brain is like, oh, I don't need to clean these up, but you do. I use an X-Acto knife, and I have a tool. This is an older version of the tool. This is a mold line scraper from Citadel. These are not cheap. Their equipment is not cheap, but they have some decent ones. Equipment. I bought these more than 20 years ago. These are snippers, and what you do is you snip the miniature off the frame, and what it does, it's got a flat edge here so that you can cut as close as you can. I'm not seeing this here, focus. You can cut as close as you can to the face of the miniature to cut off what they call the sprue. But you need to clean them. Now these were on a sprue, but I don't think I glued these. I think these are called press fit. That's a new thing that they do with GW, a lot of their stuff, where they're engineered to just push together and they do not come apart. I mean, you could probably pry them apart, but you'd probably do more damage than it's worth. But you can see there's a little bit of a mold line there, and I should have caught that. But that's what you want to get rid of, that stuff. I have definitely some stuff on these these CMON minis that is just not great. So one of the ways I do that is you use a mold line scraper to just scrape the edge of the plastic. You can also use a file. This is a sort of a pin file, a needle file. This is a needle file, but it's not pointy. I have a bunch of them, but this is the one I have sitting out. And you can use this to soften the edge. You don't want to remove any details. You want to focus on just smooth edges to get rid of that. Here's a good example. You can see here, I missed it with her hair. This is Jennifer Jones. Jessica Jones, right? Jessica Jones. I don't know. I'm thinking about painting this one as Deborah. But yeah, you can see I didn't clean it. It's bad, so I want to fix that because it's right up front. Actually, let's just try it. So I normally do a knife, and I'm telling you now, knives are scary. You want to be very, very careful. You should work away from you. So let's just do a little bit of this. I'll touch it up later with the paint. Let's see here. Is it focused? Yeah, there we go. So I push away, and then I just use my thumb to manage it here, to peel that off. And it will look better. You really want to try to do this. You definitely need to do it on these, but you should remember to do it on regular minis. It makes them look a little bit smoother and, I guess, realistic. But you should do this before you paint them, you prime them. Well, definitely do them before you paint them, but definitely you should try to do them before you prime them. This is going to be a bit of a challenge because we do have some shading going on there. Yeah, you want to avoid poking your fingers because boy, oh boy, I've stabbed myself pretty good with these. Never anything really terrible, but I've had some bad experiences, so you want to work away. Let's see if the mold line remover, the newer one looks a little bit better, but they're very expensive. There's probably some other solutions out there. Now, this isn't going to poke you. You probably could hurt yourself, but you just use this and you just scrape along that edge and it will smooth it up. So this is something that I recommend. You know, you can also, like I said, use a file. Files aren't too expensive. They are dangerous too if you poke yourself with them, especially the pointier needle files. Yeah, I wish I'd done that before I painted her. Well, before I primed her. So yeah, you definitely could use an airbrush to the next step. You definitely should clean them. You need to potentially have glues. I use plastic. This is called plastic weld. It doesn't work on all plastics. I don't think it works on the CMON ones. I'll show you one here that I did, because it's another process of stuff that you need to worry about. This stuff evaporates way too easily. Like I did not use this bottle up, but somehow it doesn't really seal, which is kind of scary. It means that the solvent it's not some nasty solvents is evaporating out of the bottle because it's not spilled, it's not sticky, it doesn't have anything on there. It just evaporated out. I also use super glue. For super glue, I did this miniature here. Now this is not really a miniature, it's huge. It's one of the Sentinels from the X-Men set of stuff from Marvel United. This arm broke in shipping, and I didn't want to send it back. It's all really expensive and not great for the environment. So what I did is I pinned it. And pinning is a process where you drill into one side and then the other side, and you're trying to get you want them to match up. So what I did on mine is what I used to pin was a paper clip. Do I have one floating around here? You can use other types of wire, but paper clips are pretty great because they're pretty rigid. And you know, it's sort of like this. This is what I'm going to show you what you need. But you drill it into the one surface, and then I cut a little bit. I put a piece of the paper clip, I straightened it out, and then poked it in there, and then clipped it so that I could actually line it up, and then poke this body part to show where the hole was going to be. And then I tried to make sure that it was basically straight through the whole body to give it some solidity, and it's definitely there. The only thing I had to use quite a bit of super glue, but if you use straight super glue, which you could do, it's still very likely to break. You can see here, they actually glued them too. This is I didn't put this on, but it's some sort of plastic glue or super glue. Cyanoacrylate. Cyanoacrylate dries very quickly, but you can glue your hands together. So if you have a kid, make sure you show them how to use that stuff. Associated tangent question: does Ralpatha paint still exist? I mean, I have some Ralpatha. I like their paints. They're pretty good. I mean, you can find, there's lots of paints. P3 paints are pretty good. Their white was one of my favorites until I got the Pro Acryl from Monument. I really like this white. White is my least favorite paint. It is the most picky. It is easiest to screw up. You definitely have to let it dry. It can be chalky. You want to put it on thin and put multiple coats thin, not try to do it all in one go. You can see I cleaned up the mold lines here as best I could. So, you know, you want to do that stuff beforehand. And something like this is a good choice, especially if somebody young, or even just, you know, I'm clumsy. You know, you really should be using something like this and not an X-Acto knife. But what I generally do is I use, like, one of the things that happens with my X-Acto knives is this tip gets broken all the time, like right away. I'll put a new blade on and break the tip. If it breaks, I just file it with one of these needle files or a regular file, or even on the concrete, and then I just use this edge because it's pretty dull. It still could cut you, but it's pretty dull and it doesn't, and it will do a pretty good job. So I use the older blades after I've cut some. Hey, there's a piece I didn't get. You really have to spend some time looking at them to clean them up. It's not critical, but it definitely is a nice way to get really good looking miniatures. So yeah, it's a challenge, but if you're patient with it, you can get some really great results. So I really want to paint these. I actually have a couple other large minis that I want to do. I'm not really a big miniature painter. I mean, these Simon ones are pretty large. This is a good one here that I airbrushed recently, and then I just used this red. So I was saying that it's not really a great contrast paint. Necessarily, it is a contrast paint, but it doesn't have a lot of shading. It still does the job. It settles in, and it will do, if you do like I did on this miniature here, this was entirely painted with, I think it was this color, gray cere. I don't know if they make this anymore, paint. I mean, this was 4 years ago. And so I bought the rattle can. I did not bring that home with me. I left it with Scott, but I bought the rattle can. I sprayed this color, and then I brought this to touch up when I painted over. So you put it on the, like if you have a color go over into an area you don't want it to, particularly like if it was the blue on this where the brown is going to go, it's not that big of a deal. It's still not great. But if it's brown on where I want this blue to go, you definitely don't want that there. So if you put a little bit of the gray cere, you can touch it up. And I feel you do, especially something like this, that the surface is very kind of organic, you're never going to see that touch up. It doesn't even have to really match. But anyway, so I did this one here where I did the zenithal highlight, and then I painted him with this red. And you can see how great the zenithal highlight is. It's basically the same, maybe 2 coats of this red, thinned down a little bit, and it really turned out quite good. It's not done. I got a long way to go. Well, not a long way, but I got a ways to go on this one. I still want to do some work on it. I actually kind of went to doing some of the, I started painting these orcs because I've actually been wanting to paint orcs forever. I've only ever painted like a couple one-offs that were just at the beginning of me painting minis. So I want to keep on getting back to those. I've gone on another tangent. So this mat here, they don't sell anymore. It's pretty good size. I like it, as I said, because it's, I'm going in too close. I like it because it has these edges to stop the paint from spreading. There are also now these ones, we sell one in the BGE store. I have only ever used it once. I feel that I was sad that we got this color. It is peach or flesh tone, but ultimately it's not that bad, especially since when I looked at stuff on Amazon, they were not the right color. This one actually I was able to get pretty decent mixes. Now, I would want it to be white so that you can truly see the color, but this is okay. What's really great about this is it actually has a water cup that compresses and you can roll this up. And it has little wells to mix your paints in. It actually has an edge to prevent the paint from spilling, you know, spreading. It's got the little stuff inside to help clean your brush. It's a pretty great idea, and I think this is like $16 on BGG store. They're not much more or about the same price on Amazon. If you're ordering something for BGG, that's a good excuse to just get something like that. It's a great surface. I also have a cutting board, an older cutting mat, excuse me, here that I use so that I can cut. Like I have it just to the edge and I can cut something on a miniature, like a sprue. Because if I use this, I can actually do a good job cutting. Let's see if I have like something I can cut on a sprue here in the immediate vicinity. I don't know. Oh yes, I do. What am I talking about? I got a bunch of stuff. So I think this was the Chaos Chaos Space Marines. Let's see here. These were like, I chose, you often have extra parts. You should save them to do what they call conversions. So you do this, you want to use the nipper or the side cutter, and these can be expensive. There are some pretty inexpensive ones out there that do a good job. I think it's crazy how expensive they are when I think they all do a pretty good job. Maybe they just don't last, but I've had these for 20 years. I've had two of these. One of them, the spring broke, and I still have that set of clippers, but then I bought another one just so that, because you know, you kind of want it to return. But you want to cut it flush to the miniature. Let's see if we can get this to focus. You want to press the flat edge up against it and then trim. And then you can see it does a pretty good job of cutting it smooth. Now I still have to clean it up some, but it's not bad. It's even okay on these rounded parts, right? You just get it close as you can, clip. This one's going to be a weirder spot. So sometimes you might need to use an X-Acto knife to do it. It's definitely scarier. This is much, much safer. And so there you go, that's trimmed off. So yeah, you would want to go in and then clean it up. And I definitely feel this is, if you're doing stuff where you have to assemble them, something along these lines that's going to cost you probably at least $15. But like the GW versions of this are like $50 now. And there's some crazy ones from Japan that are expensive too that are really good. I do use a wet palette. I'm going to tell you that. I live in Southern California. That's mostly show the kids how to glue their hands together. I'm not going to do that. Scott mentioned that a little bit ago. So if you clean this, you can clean it with I'll show you my wet palette I got some solutions for that stuff too. You know, you can file it down. And you can use an emery board for this too. You know, I actually have like an old emery board that broke, and I use it where it's actually not quite as abrasive, and it does a pretty good job and it smooths it out. You don't have to buy files. The thing is, the emery board's kind of big. Needle files, this is a little big. Can get to a point and get in there. Here's that one edge I cut with the side cutter. You know, clean it up. Make sure you don't go too heavy because you can mess it up, because you know it's irreversible. But these are, it ends up looking pretty great. And if you just spend a little bit of time cleaning up when you're when you're assembling it, it works well. Now you notice this was a Chaos Marine, and I said earlier it broke off. I glued this arm on. Which guy is missing his arm? Here we go. So this broke off, and I super glued it on, and I think I actually like to use plastic cement, but I did these in Germany, and there's plastic cement that Testers makes. It's gel. It's like a gel that comes out. It does a good job. It melts the plastic too, but it takes a lot longer to dry. Obviously, super glue is the fastest. This stuff is really great. This type of stuff. There's different brands. Micro Weld is another one I like. That it's tiny little plastic bottles, and that has evaporated. Now the one that I had, I bought this one after that last one evaporated. It kind of seemed to have leaked. So I'm not so sure about those anymore, but I will probably pin this. Now, the same here, I could put this way. This is not the right arm. Hey, I've got a robot arm that's going the wrong direction. But I can pin this, and it will make sure it stays on there a little bit more, tough, because you're gonna touch these, and it's easy to break them. I'm bummed that broke though. Some people pin everything. I met one of Sebastian's friend who pins the whole model together as he's doing it. So he's going to make sure that stuff's not going to break apart. He's probably had too much heartache with it. Wet palette was what somebody mentioned. First, I'm going to mention I like stuff from Masterson. This is a what they call a Masterson rinse well. So you have this bottle, and you fill it with water, and then you put it on this. I'm not going to do it right now. It's leaking here too. Maybe because it was just wet. You put it on there, and it's inverted on here, and then you have this little reservoir of water, and it will only refill when the water goes out. You have this little plunger here, and it opens up the drain, and it drains into this reservoir, and it can go pretty far before you need to empty it out. I think basically this will fill it up. These are like $25 on Amazon. They're pretty great. It's called Masterson Rinse Well. There's another one out. I saw Green Stuff World. I think that's their name. I've never bought anything from them. I bought some stuff. That's not true. I bought some stuff at a store, but I've never ordered anything online because I believe they might even be in Spain. But they have a branded one that is a smaller box. It's kind of like this shape with a smaller reservoir. That might be pretty good. It has a long, thin line to a small reservoir with a little pusher too. Much less water, so it might be pretty good too. I like this one because it's a lot of water. I'm messy and I like to have the plenty of water to clean stuff up. That's my dirty water. Then I use this one as one of these as my clean water, and that way I can keep them separate. I won't be drinking the water. And you know that the rinse well's about 25 bucks. These are about $12. There might be some other ones. I think these are pretty amazing though. These are some of the best things I think they've ever done. The other thing you need to worry about is spilling your paints. This type of paint would actually have to sit for a while before it actually, not a while, but a little while before it spills. It's thicker consistency. Although it's pretty runny in there. I actually might have put some of the thinner in there, the airbrush thinner, this here, because I think it was kind of too thick. You're not seeing it in there, but anyway, you still want to make sure it doesn't spill. GW used to make, this is another thing that they don't make. Oh, they don't make this mat anymore either. This was like $25, and that's why I was looking at the, we have the one from the BG store and looking at ones online. There's some other choices out there. I didn't see any white, but I might have been not looking 100% correctly. This prevents them from spilling. I mean, it has to take a pretty heavy strike. This is another type of paint, which we'll talk about in a minute. I mentioned this here. This is the same kind of stuff. But yeah, with the lid, when they're open, the tendency is it's very easy to knock them. I mean, you still don't want to knock it down, but it's much better than just the slightest glance knocks them down if they're not held down. So they don't make these anymore, but I 3D printed these, and these are pretty good too. They're not gonna, they have the feet that won't, I have a couple of them. I gave some to Sebastian. This one's designed specifically for this size of bottle. It's not as great as the silicone or this rubber one, but there's ways to work around that. You don't even have to have one of these, but if you put a little tiny bit of poster paste, poster putty, oh yeah, Gare's actually mentioning something about the plastic the paint. I'll talk about that in a minute. But if you put this on, and see, this isn't going to work. It needs to be on the edge. But if you put it on the edge, it'll definitely not. It won't fall out too easily. Now you could still knock the whole darn thing down, but that helps. You can also use this and just put this on a board. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to do it, but because silicone's not good. But let's see what it does on here. Maybe this might be dusty, but if you have enough of this, it won't. It's less likely to spill. And this is not actually probably the greatest putty. I've had it been using it for a while to actually do what I'm going to show you next. So you have. There's a lot of great. I actually got the models for those on Thingiverse. There's lots of great stuff on Thingiverse that you can print out. There's different kinds of holders that will actually hold the lid open for these GW paints. I don't know if they do this Citadel, this size of bottle, So this is one of the contrast paints. So these are a little bit bigger. These are 18 milliliters, I think. These are 24, I believe. Yep. And then these are 12, I think. So, you know, there's quite a range in sizes there. The nice thing about using, so if you want to do them directly out of the pot, that's what's great about the GW, but you run the risk of spilling them. These bottles are dripper, eyedropper style bottles. These are great. You know, I mean, I actually put this on a plate and then work from that. You know, just put a couple drops. A little bit more controllable. I use the ends of my brush to actually get drops of paint. So I'll put in this bottle and then put it on the palette a couple at a time, you know, one at a time to get when I'm mixing colors together. And that's how I basically have my formulas. It's not rocket science. It's not perfect, but it's close. The next thing is, we were talking about, somebody asked about a wet palette. I have the one here. Oh, here it is. This is a Masterson wet palette. Let's go. This is a very bright one. This is like their basic one that I think is about $15. It does a pretty good job. It seals pretty well. It doesn't, this is a sponge that's been in there for a long time. This is my first, well, this is my first commercial wet palette. I actually made a couple of wet palettes of my own over time. Adam Smasher on Tabletop Minions has a video on how to make your own wet palette with a Ziploc bag, you know, one of their little like sandwich containers. They also have, I should say, they actually have one that's a little bit more money that's got a better lid, like maybe $20. And then Army Painter and Redgrass, before I get on to the other stuff there, Redgrass makes wet palettes. This one is one I did the Kickstarter of it. This is the second edition. I have the first one. I backed both of their Kickstarters. These have rubber. They seal pretty great. You still probably should put them in the refrigerator. It definitely slows down mold, but you don't want to leave them in there too long. You can only, basically it gives you a couple of days. If it is especially useful if you're using standard acrylics. You can also get like a piece of glass to do oil paints in here. There's Opelius, or I can't remember his name. I haven't seen him streaming, but he paints with oils and does an amazing job. Paints minis with oils. But these are like anywhere from $15 to $35 essentially. The nice thing about the Redgrass one I just showed you, they actually have something called hydration membranes. They are absolutely reusable. I can actually show you in the one I just opened. I've used this one a few times now so far and cleaned it. The one issue is contrast paints, when you use them on here, tend to leave a little bit of residue once it, you know, it dries a little bit. So I couldn't, and there's some silver on here too, although I probably didn't do that great of a job trying to clean it off. But you can see this actually had paint on it. I rinsed the paper off, and then it has the sponge. But you know, that's the basics of this. If you do the one that I was talking about that Adam has, where you just use a Ziploc container, you just put paper towels, you fold them over and make basically a sponge out of that. And then you use vellum, or one of the most common ones to use is the baking paper, right? You can actually put in an oven and put cookies on, right, and bake it. You just don't want one that has silicone in it, because then it's not going to do the job. It's going to resist the water. Let's see here, what else we've got. So yeah, there's a couple of choices for your wet palette, and that's definitely a valuable tool, especially if you're using standard especially, he was mentioning Tamiya here. I actually have some Tamiya. That's also a plastic glue that's really, oh, here it is. This is a plastic glue that Gare's, or no, I hear her name on a South Park episode. That's funny. Yeah, we actually did we met Trey, and they said that they were going to mention, I saw them do something about Board Game Breakfast and just thought that was hilarious, you know, a parody of that, and wrote him and said that was great. And he says, well, we're probably going to have you in this week's episode. Then we heard, it was around BGG Con, and when we got to BGG Con, to Dallas, everybody was messaging us, oh, they mentioned you guys on South Park. He also did, if you look on our YouTube channel, they did a little, not wax paper, not wax paper, but baking paper, baker's paper or whatever, or vellum. Vellum is a drafting paper. You can buy it like in 8.5 by 11 pads. It's not easy because people don't do a lot of drafting anymore. Anyway, I'm sorry I missed that. I don't remember which one you're asking was a Warhammer figure. This one, let's see here, who says that? Gare mentioned this. What you can do is this: you can take what they call sprue glue. You can take the sprue that I was clipping and make smaller pieces of it, and then stick it inside this solvent. It's a glue, and it makes it thicker, and you can actually use it to fill in gaps. So, for example, I don't know that I could use it on this because this is not the stuff, but maybe you can see there's a gap. This was assembled by Simon, you know, some folks in China probably. And you would want to really cover that up. It doesn't look, it'll be an obvious gap. This is not really well put together. I would probably need to use putty for this one, actually. I don't know that I'm that concerned about it. I mean, I'm doing just table stuff. I'm not trying to win awards. Yeah, parchment's exactly correct. Baking parchment. But you don't want, it can't have silicone in it. But this is actually great glue, and the bottle doesn't evaporate so quickly. But you can also use this to do the sprue glue, which it lets you, you just make it so it's thicker, and then you just put that into the cracks, and it will seal up the cracks, because it's a glue, and it's got some of the, you just cut up these pieces into little pieces and then stick it inside the bottle, and it'll dissolve. It needs to be small, though, and just let it keep dissolving. It's pretty great. I've actually done that before with the micro weld stuff. I've actually done... With micro weld, I've actually shaved off pieces of the plastic and then just laid them in there, just kept laying them in there and putting the glue on it, and that worked great. That was a long time ago. Baking paper does, some of the baking paper has silicone. I think the Costco one does not, if I recall correctly. I actually have been wanting to buy it just to find out, but we don't really need any baking paper. Nikki's like, we don't need it. Let's see what else we've got here. Definitely be cautious. I have a X2000 knife from X-Acto that has this. I've had this one for years, probably for almost 35 years. It doesn't roll because it's got this flat, but regular X-Actos roll and then can fall on your foot. But this one is, I don't know who made this one, handy. But they have the 2000 that has a little nubbin on it that stops it from rolling, but then the cap is terrible. Like, it's very easy to fall off. I actually 3D printed a cap that's much like a standard X-Acto cap, and it's done a pretty great job. I've actually had to print a couple of them because they break. Now I got that cap on Thingiverse, the design, the file. You definitely have to be cautious with any of this kind of stuff, especially if somebody young is going to be using it. But I love their stuff. I think that all these tools are really good. They just have to be cautious with them. You can hurt yourself with these. So I was mentioning this airbrush earlier. This one I got for pretty inexpensive when they had a birthday sale for Badger. But this one doesn't have any kind of protector for that needle. And I've poked that needle. One of the things you need to do, I'll go over cleaning. I've used these I've shown this on the stream. I've never airbrushed on the stream. I should try it. I'm just worried about getting it on the camera and stuff like that. But one of the things you can do to clean it is you get the paint out, and then you lightly cover this and pull the trigger back. Oh, you already pulled the trigger back, but you press the trigger down for the paint, but you could stab yourself, and it's just a tiny amount, but dang, it hurts, and it's pretty bad. This one here, to do the backflow, as I say, you pull it back, you make sure you have water in the cup instead of, or the bottle, because this is a siphon feed. But you just press on it lightly, and then it just bubbles back in, and it gets the paint out of the body of the airbrush. It's much easier for a gravity feed one, like this one. But yeah, so I have to remember to pull it back and then put my finger on it and just lightly, and then let the bubbling go. It gets the paint out, dump it out, do it again, and then pull your finger off before you let go of the trigger. There are versions of this that have little forks, two little points on it that will protect the tip and protect your finger, but you then would need to use a paper towel. You could do it with a paper towel on this as well, just a wet paper towel, and that's probably what I should do so that I don't stab myself. But this is a great airbrush. It's very fine. There are Harder and Steenbeck make some great. I would love to buy one of theirs. They're a little expensive for me. And I have tons of airbrushes. I really don't need them. But this one is a little different than this one. I'll show you first. Like this is the standard. These are old school. As I said, it was from the 80s, early 90s. This nozzle head is all one piece. I mean, it's multiple pieces, but it comes off together, and then you can pull the needle out and clean it. You want to do as much cleaning before you pull the needle out. You definitely don't want it to go, well, you have to pull this one out through the body. There's a Teflon bearing inside of here that will squeegee off most of the paint, but you just don't want to get too much in your spring mechanism. It's for the return on the trigger. And you definitely need that because it stops the paint when you let go. So yeah, you have to take this one apart to clean it. The other one would have, actually I'll show you right now because this one is one like the other. It uses Teflon for the needle bearings to actually close it off from leaking. And you can see that here. It can be in a solvent. It can be in alcohols, thinners. You can replace these and they're not too hard to do, and they're not too expensive. And it's way better than the rubber, right? That's when you buy any of these more advanced ones, it's going to have that. The other thing this one does, though, which is pretty interesting, and it's part of the reason why it's so fine, it has a small needle, but although Harder and Steenbeck claim that they can do it with a, wow, that's not coming off. Let's put that back on there. This is where I think one of these less expensive airbrushes is a good way to get started. And if you get good at it and you want to do more detail, then you definitely want to buy a better airbrush. Actually, I think on that one I have a smaller needle on it. Wow, that is not coming off. I might not have done a good job on cleaning that. Wow, how's that? Huh, let me figure that out. Maybe I should do that later so I don't stab myself. Wow. Okay, well, I'm not going to stab myself. We'll figure it out later. But yeah, you got to watch out from the needles. Harder and Steenbeck uses larger needles to get fine detail. They have like a new needle design. I'm not certain what they've done. This one here, similar to the one from Harbor Freight, has a different kind of a nozzle here. And then you can see the rubber is actually squeezing out of this. So I didn't do anything. I didn't take this one apart, and the rubber is coming out. So I'm not really sure. You can use beeswax to seal these, so it's not such a big deal. But beeswax will clean out, especially if you use like alcohol to clean anything. But yeah, there's a bit of rubber coming out. So this is the one I said that I got for $50. There's another airbrush I got with the compressor, $55. There's another one I bought from Amazon, red and gold and silver and gold. It had actually like this adapter. This came with it. They had a different quick release similar to this, but it didn't have the adjustment that the other ones do. You know, to adjust the pressure, which I really think you need because the battery power compressor is not going to have a ton of force. I think it maxes at about 20. Oh, wheel turner. Okay, I hope you don't spend too much money. I have actually been there's actually streams on Twitch that you can watch of me painting minis, and you can also see a playlist. It's called GameNight, PaintNight on our YouTube channel that has a lot of the streams and all the new streams because we've now co-stream on YouTube so that they go immediately on the website onto YouTube. You can see a bunch of these. I painted all. I mean, somebody asked about doing me doing Hulk, and I thought it was on YouTube, and then I thought, well, maybe it wasn't because they looked for it, and then I found it. It wasn't labeled as such. I should actually go back and take pictures so that you can see what I'm working on because I'm just using thumbnails from the stream. I generally take a picture of the miniature if I can, from the choices that YouTube gives you because they automatically select them. You can upload a thumbnail. So that's maybe I'll take pictures of them so you can see what's going on with it, be a little bit clearer. Let me think, what else we got here? Yeah, no problem, Wheel Turner. Hey, David, how you doing? Mini holder. So we were going to talk about that. Paint holder use the minis. There you go. You got it yesterday. So this is one from GW. It says a little bit of Citadel on there somewhere. This is an older one. The new ones don't do this. This is actually kind of cool. You could put it on a little tripod to paint stuff if you wanted to. The new ones are thinner. Like it's got a more of a heavier base, but it's a tighter neck before you get to the jaws. These are pretty cool. You can pull it apart and do the jaws and stick it on there. These are like $15. You don't have to do that though. I actually have a bunch of different styles of holders. I'm crazy. I try everything. This actually does a great job. You can hold it and you can bind your hands a little bit more easily so that you can control your painting and you're not shaking so much. And it's pretty awesome. It's the way to go. But you don't have to buy one of these. Here's the first thing I used to ever paint minis. This was a piece of dowel that I cut, and then I put the poster tack on it. Actually, this might be Quake Hold, which is like poster tack. It is getting less sticky, but poster tack works as well. I have some blue poster tack here somewhere, right here. And then this came with, actually I think this was a mix of stuff. Part of this was like from Michaels, and that works great. And then this was something that came in, I think, with maybe the red grass stuff that I bought, because I actually bought a red grass paint holder. I'll show you that in a minute. But this does the same thing. It's pretty good. You can hold it pretty solidly, and you can paint. You just rotate it to do stuff on it. A dowel works great. Another great method is just using a prescription bottle. I think that's why this this tack is not working, because I actually airbrushed with this on here. This will do the same thing. It holds the miniature pretty great soundly. It does a nice job. You know, it has a maximum size here because of the size of the head, but you can have it overhang, but if it gets too big, it might be a problem. There are larger versions of these out there. Actually, I think they're more based on this design now. The new design of this handle's more slender. Why is this not focusing? But they all have this kind of jaw from theirs. That's what's really great, because this will go pretty big. I have had it compress these, the minis where it popped off here and kind of messed up the base. It bent it slightly. But those are two things you can use that are just to start, and they're not expensive at all. You don't have to use a prescription bottle. You can use an aspirin bottle or something like that. I mean, I have these right here. I use them for a couple things, but this one can be used for that. You just put it on here. These are Kaiser. Let's see here. I don't have anything with a really huge base, but it does a great job. And you know, you can do it for pretty inexpensive. You just need a bottle that's left over and some poster tack or Quake Hold. Let's see here, what's going on with my phone? Who knows? Let's see. I also have these. I can't remember the company name now. They were Hobby Holder, but it's now, they have had some Kickstarters with, they have a wet palette, all kinds of cool stuff. This one is like a modular one. Is this glued on? No, it's pop sign. So the handle can change. This is the basis of their system. It uses bottle caps. And you can, I decided to go for yellow submarine colors. And it pops in there, and you can change the size of handle for it. This one's pretty great. There's also this one here that they sent when I backed it on Kickstarter. They gave STLs to make your own handle for this one. Now this one's screwed in, but they also had this is cracking though. Probably because they just had it on here for too much pressure, but it doesn't quite fit as smooth. Well, it fits great here, but then the bottle lid doesn't really it's for larger bottle lids, but it works. You just put that bottle lid on there, put this on here, and put your miniature on. What's great about this is it has this wire holder so that you can hold it more solidly. You can even rest your hand, you know, like to hold to hold your brush and stuff like that. But this is really, really great. And there's other ones that do that too. I'll show you another one we backed on Kickstarter. This one here has, I just popped off the head, darn it. Let me show you here. I'll show you this one here. But this has a stand for it. This is made out of wood. These are made in Germany. This uses cork. They also have plugs, I think, that are wood that you can use the putty. The problem is these are designed for specific miniature sizes. That one probably would fit if I had it tight. Yeah, it does. Not that good though. But it's great too. It has this little skull on the top that you put on to protect the head so you don't poke the wires in. It keeps it solid, so when you're holding it, you put your finger on there and do the same thing. So there's a different size of the head. Actually, I think I have two sizes of this one too. So yeah, this is a shorter one and this is a longer one. So there's lots of choices. This was another one that I bought. This was also made by the people that made the palette, the wet palette I showed you with the red lid. This is Red Grass. This is their first one. Again, you use poster tack on it. You do this, and then they have a little pivot that you can, so you can hold it with the grip and then just change the angle of attack here. They have a newer one of these that has a more weight in the bottom and I think magnetic, so you could put it on something like a surface that you're working that's magnetic, ferrous or whatever. So there's a lot of choices. They're all, it's definitely worth, you know, stepping your way up if you can. Don't spend too much money. Trying to find that skull. There it is. The other neat thing about this one this is a German company that made these, is they have cork inserts so that you can pop them in and do different sizes for the different bases. So, and you can pin things on here and stuff like that using straight pins. They're all pretty good. This one actually has a little bit in here so you can pop it out, because you can't push from underneath. You just pop it out with that. What is the company here? Rathcore, if that sounds right. pk.pro.de. pk-pro.de. I know that they actually kind of go out of stock on these occasionally, and that was when they did a Kickstarter. We got a few of these things. They're pretty great. But yeah, they all will do a good job. I feel just to get started, a dowel or a bottle would be a great way to get going and see if it's for you. There's the base, the holder. That's the weirdest one about this one. It has that holder instead of just something to rest on. But I guess it means so it's easy for you to manipulate it. I mean, I could keep going. I got so much stuff. I really like these. These are great. They're light. They don't have a lot of weight on them, but they're, you know, they got a fat bottom. Even the new ones are pretty fat, so they'll stand pretty well. I still knock them down. I have this sitting here all the time, and I'm knocking the miniature down that I'm working on all the time. It's pretty great. They're all pretty great. And let's see, I'm getting near the end here. How useful is that hook at the top, David? I think it's pretty great. It's helpful. You don't have to have it, but it is, if you're looking for some major stability. I've been able to do some eyes that I just could not do when I was freehanding it. And again, if you put your hands together so you know, you're holding it together, you're going to get some stability. It's just nice to, like, you don't want to rest your finger on the miniature. We end up wiping, you know, oils build up and it takes the paint off and it sucks. Like, I put my finger on top of like the head of something, and I've messed it up, right? You just don't want to touch the miniature when you're painting until you have varnish on it. You know, this is cool. This is a cape that was the airbrush shading, and then I put basilicanum gray on it, thinned out. There's a little bit of pooling here, which they call coffee staining. If you put a little bit of thinned out color on it, you can build it up so it doesn't really stick out. And really, it doesn't stick out once you put it at an angle. I'm looking at it straight on, and it's not quite the way you're going to see it. But if you're worried about it, you know, then you can go for it. Now, a lot of people ask for the kits, like, what kit can I buy? And the thing is you can't buy a kit. Well, you can. If you go with speed paints from Army Painter, They come with a kit, a starter kit of colors. You could go for that, but they're not cheap. And then I didn't mention inks. I did show some inks. I have some standard game inks over here from Vallejo, and then I have these things called shades, and then GW calls theirs shades as well. This is like this one's called Nuln Oil, and it's a darker one. This is more of a brown one. I think this is more like Agrex Earth Shade, one of the colors they use. I have that. And then this is an ink. And GWs were literally inks back in the day, and I don't think the game inks are quite like that. But these are all pretty great. You can even make a wash with just the color. You thin it out with a medium. You could use this as a medium, and you can make a wash out of a color. GW has a ton of colors. Vallejo has a pretty good mix of colors too. But these are great because this is what you do to what they call it liquid talent. You put it on, for example, here. After I painted the thing just gold, I did not do any shading. I just painted it gold. Let me get a sip here. I then put this Army Painter Strong Tone on it. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And then washed it on there and just let it dry. It does bring the brightness down because it is ink. But then what I do is I come back with the paint and just pick out some highlights to make it brighten it back up. And so like on a surface like this, let's get it in focus. Get this stuff out of the shot will help. You just put a little bit thin amounts of the gold on there and just keep building it up so that it doesn't, like on the edges and stuff like that, or any of the exposed bodies of it where it would be, you're brushing up against it would shine it up. And then it gives you this great level of shading without actually, I end up shading. You can just put an ink on there and just go with it. I end up putting the color back on top of it to bring it back out. But it's not that hard. One of the things I actually painted recently with a larger brush was this little bit of detail on these capes. I did not actually use a teeny little brush because you can see, I actually think I started with it here with that little brush, and I was unhappy because it took a lot more work to get it on there, and it ended up getting not smooth. And when I used the larger brush, I was able to get these other details thinned out, paint more, and I was able to just delicately brush it on there, and it turned out pretty great. Freehanding is, painting is pretty awesome if you can get your skills together on it. I'm okay at it. Boy, I wish that would rotate. But I'm not fantastic at it. Let me think. I don't know if there's much more. There's tons more we can go on about. I really, there's lots of good tools out there. There's definite ways to get yourself started. But really, look at the models that you're starting with. Look at I use reference on these all the time. I don't try to come up with my own color scheme. I have done that. I have a dark Eldar miniature here somewhere that is, I don't see him. Not dark Eldar, but a standard Eldar. It was one of my first ones, but I came up with the color scheme on it. And that's fun to do, but if you just want to get moving and not sweat it, you should just start painting based on what they recommend on, let me switch the camera here. You should just use what they recommend on the box, right? You look at paints, now sometimes they don't give you that. With the Marvel United, they definitely have painted. I actually used I downloaded all the photos from the Kickstarter. Thanks, David. I know you did Marvel United miniatures in prior sessions. Did Marvel license a palette of colors from one of these companies? I actually added the colors. I've just been using the GW colors and trying to get close to what they look like in the photos. And I feel they look pretty great. This is how Dormammu looked. And I just used the colors I had, and I don't sweat it, right? It's close. What was the other one? Kang, the Conqueror. This was just two colors. I used like a magenta and then a green. It was very basic. I think that might be the same blue for the face. and just thinned out with the contrast medium. You know, that really looks good. You can do some great stuff, and you don't have to go crazy with the colors. And you can mix them. I've mixed them all along. I've had no problems with it. Like if I'm not real satisfied with the color, here's a Mysterio that I did that I specifically wanted to look swirly clouds like inside the dome or whatever. And so I painted it white with the airbrush and, you know, got it featured as much as I could. I did not want to touch that with a brush. And then I came in with the paint wet and I just modeled it around and then let it dry, and it looked pretty good. I think I want to try to put I put varnish on it, but I think I might put, I don't know, I have to think about it. It might be a shiny globe, maybe not. This is another really great one here, an example of how much painting I did. This is Kingpin, and I primed him, I zenithal primed him, and then I just I left it as it was. Hey, hello, Acer Damza. I'm using old paint balls which I can't recycle. That's pretty good. That's exactly what I'm doing. I save them for all kinds of things. I put used X-Acto blades in there. Nice thing, HornsFan01 says, nice thing is once you paint something, you're no longer comparing it to anything else like pictures or someone else's paint job, and yours can end up looking great on its own. They really do. I did not say, I said you can do the paint can. The way to do that, the easiest way to do it is you paint it black first, then you paint it white. You keep dusting it to do the zenithal highlighting with the white. Scott did that and they looked pretty great. He has zero patience for stuff, and so he did a pretty quick job and they looked really good. I painted his nebula when we were house sitting last year, and I didn't even ask. I should have asked him, but I didn't think he'd mind. I was bored and I painted it up. But this one here, I airbrushed it, right? I did the zenithal highlight, I airbrushed it, and I was really happy with the way the suit looked. So I just went in and did a little bit of pop on the creases with some dark paint. I painted the edge here with some dark paint, a little bit on the creases here, and then I went in and did pinstriping, which is not that hard, especially if you varnish it first, which I did not do this time, because then you can easily clean up if you make a mistake. You just clean it right back up and then put it back on and then varnish it again. But this looked great, and this is literally white zenithal highlighting, you know, with the black, gray, and then white. And then I just put the black in, I put the purple in, I put the skin tone with that Gilliman flesh, and then I put this little gold for the buttons. I actually put the wrong kind of paint on the tile floor or concrete, but it looks good. I didn't worry about it. And it turned out great, and it was very quick. And you know, that's what you want. You want to get them done as quickly as possible to look as, you know, as decent as they can look. And this is, I definitely have years of painting experience, but it's not that hard to get there. Scott hadn't painted that much at all. I'm showing you all this stuff and I'm on the wrong cam. I'm a knucklehead. Hold on, let me switch back. I was showing you this one here. This was the Kingpin, and he looks great. You know, I mean, it really was very basic and not a lot of paint. Other than the prime, right? You know, the primer. But it looks great. Let's see here, and I was showing you, gosh, I showed you a bunch of stuff. Here's Mysterio. Looks really cool. What else did we do here? I'm sorry, I'm out of it. Here's the, I am definitely tired. Here's the Doctor Strange. I did a little bit of glow from like his hands are yellow because of these spells he's casting. It turned out pretty neato. He turned out great, actually. Not exactly. Nick Murphy did this great thing where he's building up to paint, you know, psyching himself up to paint the eye, and then he completely made a mess, which is exactly how it works. I did a little bit of work on his eyes, and I was very happy. I really can't see with these glasses on. And they look good. You know, I love these chibis because you can actually do the details. I did MODOK, and you know, this is really a giant face, and I went all crazy on it, and it looks really cool. So you know, you can do a lot of fun stuff, and it's worth just getting started. You know, it's better than just having them not painted. And you can do a lot of great stuff without a lot of effort. So let me see here. Thanks to everybody for joining me. And thanks for your questions and thanks for your words of support. Let's see if there's anybody we can raid. It is getting late. The Bromers are probably on. Maybe you can just go to them and they'll take us to the next group. Let's see here. The Brothers Murph. Well, let's go visit the Brothers Murph. They'll be near the end, but they'll take you to somebody else. Say hello to everybody. And thanks again for joining me. We will be gone next week, so there will be no streams. I think when we return on Tuesday, I'll do another paint stream in the morning, and then on Thursday we will do a game night. I'm not in focus, am I? This is great. I have been doing good today. Anyway, good thing we were shooting the other stuff down. But yeah, say hello to everybody and have a great weekend and get some rest. That's what I'm going to try to do now. Let's go see if we can raid them. And I don't know what they're talking about. They're looking at the stuff from Garfield. Say hello for me and click on if you want to join through. I'm sorry on YouTube you won't switch over with us, but take care everybody. Bye-bye.